Okay, welcome everyone to our last CAAD Forum series of the year. My name is Juana Salcedo. I'm Assistant Professor of Practice here at the school, and I will be introducing and moderating today's forum. The CAAD Forum series brings students, faculty, and staff together for an informal and inquisitive discussion about ideas relating to architecture and its history, theory, practice, and future. The CAAD forums create a space to introduce new research by faculty, supporting scholarly dialogue across the School of Architecture community here. So for our last CAAD forum of the year, we are delighted to have Rasa Navasaityte. Rasa is an architect, researcher, and co-founder of the Design Practice Lab for Environmental Design Strategies, which is an architectural research practice Rasa co-founded in 2008 with Daniel Kohler, who is also a professor here at the school. Departing from parts, their practice investigates through computation towards ecological inclusive forms of architectural environments. Rasa holds a Master of Arts in Architecture from the University of Applied Arts in Vienna, where she completed her master's degree with distinction at the Studio Hadid. She's a PhD candidate from Innsbruck University. Rasa is a lecturer for architecture design here at UT Austin School of Architecture. Here she teaches courses in research by design, architecture composition, and the implications of computation on housing and the city's ecologies. Rasa's recent design research focuses on implementing circular design strategies that allow for decarbonizing urban areas by including environmental context and opening collaborative opportunities. She aims for close-knit communities and circular economies weaved into existing cities. Her design approach explores architectural forms of contribution through three-dimensional synergies and atmospheres, embracing existing communities. So before joining UT Austin, Rasa led the large city architecture research cluster at UCL Bartlett School of Architecture in London, was part of the postgraduate program there. She was also a research fellow at Innsbruck University. She has held workshops and design studios at the Vilnius Academy of Arts in Lithuania and the University of East London. And her work has been exhibited at the Experimental Architecture Biennale in Prague and in Innsbruck, Graz, Vilnius, Fort Worth, London, and here in Austin. So today, Rasa will be presenting the architectural part of AI, which draws upon her PhD research, which is entitled Between the Parts, Opening the City with Distributive Meanings of Architecture, a work that seeks to contribute to the shaping of an architectural framework of ecological form at urban scales. So the presentation today will be of around 40 minutes, and the idea is that followed by that we can have 15 minutes for Q&A discussion before we wrap up at 1. So welcome, Rasa, and thanks for being here.
Hello, and thank you for Center for American Architecture and Design making those talks possible and this amazing event. And thank you, Juana, for a great introduction. And I want to thank Alan Scherer, who initiated me to come here and to share this talk. And as well for Bridget Brown, Samantha Clark, Cole Marchand, and all others helping us to prepare this event. My talk today is embracing a lot of research parts, which will be strategies like a human-based design through the history, how the history of architecture created strategies to see and analyze architecture, and how AI and how we see AI opportunities through human understanding of composition, and we try to compose and we have expectations. And as well, some experiments I will be sharing, which are part of the research which needs to be investigating with more depth and time, and brings me new trajectories. For the first part, I will be talking and want to share with you what happens when human gives the task for AI to compose the existing typology For example, as falling water house is becoming decomposed and variated within the AI as a strategy one. What if we would wish as humans for AI and demand, or ask actually what would happen if two-dimensional painting becomes three-dimensional output? Or what happens when we would use synthesis and multiplicity could be embedded, such as, for example, priority microgreens, light, and from the synthesis of tectonics of certain strategies of microgreens would become tectonics at the end to understand new potentials of carbon footprint negative strategies as design discipline. I see here a new opportunities within the synthetic thinking by AI. I will be talking as well about the research without AI, speaking about history of composition, where my research from my PhD work between the parts where I'm currently candidate at Innsbruck University, I'm researching on the void definition. And the reason is in the search of environmental and social intersections, rather less than only formal definitions. And I'm asking a question and looking at the certain scales to identify the dimensions of it and potential. For example, I will be embracing today the importance of the void as an abstraction. I will be also overviewing the architectural gaps in research in the architecture, where environmental and social intersections could be improved or has a potential. And for the urban scale, I'm interested in identity and searching for non-human ground as a new potential, for intersections of social and environmental friendly neighborhoods as new opportunities as well for investment. I wanted to share this example, which is really impressive to me, is very impressive. When Vasily was taking a bike and understood its lightweight opportunity, he abstracted for me the typology of the chair, and he was rethinking. That abstraction helped to disconnect and reinvent a product. Not only formally lines could be on surfaces he had described, but also as an abstraction, but also the industrial opportunity and the banding technique of that time was an opportunity to inform the design. And as well, affordability aspect of mass production is taking here place, which is also impressing to me to design and rethink new typologies of buildings and distancing from a certain in-framing options. In a first research part where abstraction was important, I was rethinking what the canonical, compositional, productive exercise, a famous exercise from point to line to planes, how this could be rethought within the existing strategies of computational strategies of today and also all technology innovation we have. One specific part was interesting to me to understand the group of points and this looping principle of thinking, which opens up for us into the various scales, and to see this looping principle that we could embed the other disciplines or material behavior or scales or approaches from the outside world as well and loop this back in. Such a strategy was for me important. For example, one example, if I understand field of points out of points, such as plates becoming a point, and having repetitive element, but then bringing opportunities for real-time simulation to test large scale of them and what the interaction could do, that the structural entities would be in stabilizing, interlocking, and the point out of points could be understood as a design issue where the point invites another point to interlock and stabilize, and how this tectonically could be represented not through the design thinking placing, but through the interlocks and stabilization. By that, to abstract the building, the entry course to architecture in Innsbruck University, Institute of Urban Design, I have instructed it the way of following this methodology where the objects chosen from the world, which are existing, were understood in a new dimensions and grouping them and combining them in a new ways. Here the abstraction takes a place that the building in itself is distance, but the search of the void and the mass is actually representing by the ecology of those parts between, by laying in angular sequences or geometrical intersections, or actually weaving techniques and understanding tectonics of additional issues, rethink and open architecture understanding and design strategies which would be influential and scaleless at the further future ideas for the architecture. This exercise reached those sculptural outputs. Architecture scale without AI. So I would like to present how my teaching methodology and research methodology by AI is informed actually from human thinking in design strategies as one part. Could be critical or could be very open, and I see it in multiple ways. So here, Friedrich Kissler City in Space, the Raumstadt, is a very important reference to me to overview the other architect reactions to it, to this art installation, to the manifest, which was questioning some aspects. And Osman Matthias Ungers was very interesting to me, how the abstraction and the certain characteristics of architectural language was described, which I see in a multiple ways to interpret it again. It's big impression to me from his work. And by that, we can see that this graphical exercise, it can be similar understood in architecture scale, where Osman Matthias Ungers simplifies the elements into the frames, lines, surfaces, volumes, and he calls simplification. What I'm impressed here, there is a certain different dimensions for composition are possible, not only formally, but embedding our open disciplines and areas. Similar to me as Vasily's chair is embedding a larger environment of industrial elements such as steel, prefabrication as a plate, or a kind of volumetric entities as cells, rooms, a combination, and thinking about a large scale, like an urban scale city block. And the third definition of him, which he mentions is a gap or in between, to me is the most interesting in order being impressed by that methodology, being impressed here from this historical moments of architecture descriptions, but also embedding our influence and kind of opportunities from the other art history influences to the architecture. Such as, for example, figurating the huge block and evaluating the void through human interaction effects. I see from 7 variations of a housing block, just 2 effects and 1 which combines both. So if we see this less formal, but would imagine like a social effects, what courtyard could bring, how open for interaction or how enclosed, segmented it is, I would see like 2 versions, and I see 7 variations of the silhouette or entity in a large scale. And that's interesting to me to learn from the history and to embed new perspectives within it. And the very influential part for me for the abstraction I see, which actually compacts a lot of historical knowledge from architecture, the 7 definitions which are expressed by Ungers by wall plate definition, we could say, which speaks about inframing or layering, enfilade, porche, element, gallery, typology. I see here some histories and ecological histories are actually taken in and represented as a new definitions of void itself. We were expressing those ideas, mixing these voids definitions for urban interiority course at Innsbruck University with students, where we try to understand the void as a priority of design part and plates, letting them listen these characteristics as excluding the outline of the urban block and seeing opportunities of multiple voids combined together. And for environmental part in a larger scale, I'm very highly impressed by Jean Renaudie and Gallustet and opportunities placing earth elements not on top of the roofs, not next to the building or in front, but actually through Unger's definition of the layering and in framing, it actually in-frames a human space, living space in front. So it's a design kind of strategy to recompose existing building typologies. It's searching new ways to embed nature into the cities as a part of living space and a part of shared. The triangular aspect, it's actually inverse the definition of the whole, what we see existing building blocks around, so that the nature is exposed as a priority, as a first part. The slack heaped development in essence by Schultz Phillips, who is referencing Friedrich Kiesler Raumstadt city in space. I see a huge interesting potential to understand the Portier space through the ventilation strategies. He is figurating segments of housing units for social housing concept, by the way, trying to embed a light shadow effect, so it varies like living units. They are not repeatable, but as well navigation shared space as a human space is becoming here as a main part of a design to be in composition of the whole of the social project, social living aspects and the project in itself. The Portier space for me here is very interesting to understand. It's not only the block, it's becoming a free space, a human space, and the navigation as shared is again a free space. Two voids interact here. By that way, I was interested in exploring from the Biennale Prague, I was interested to test this with real-time simulation, where those dynamic principles allows us today with real-time simulation to test in larger scale. And as well, I see also those dynamic compositional principles. They're also very interesting for nature, forestry, more kind of friendly options to test these gaps being collective as an endless field rather than being separated from the building on top or next to as a post effects of design strategy. And by this knowledge at the UCL, at the Bartlett, we were experimenting to understand large scales and embedding the enfilates, the in-framing, those abstract definition, the Kiesler Raumstadt, where the modular systems of building products could be composed in a dynamic ways. What would this bring? To open up a vertical large scales as a reverse definition of uniformity, and to question what the enfilade could do if that is in a large scale as a courtyard sequence and is playing with visibility in multiple dimensions, from top to side, from down, so to see it as a universal strategy rather from the top composed. And the Portier space was for us to color code or identify, not to code and identify the overlaps of shareability and fragments of shareability to identify good conditions. The rotation allowed us to shift and variate where shared typology of the grouping principle becomes a program such as open program, and where fragmented as privacy could find its place. And finally, we were able from computation to inform the wall and the window as 2 hours equal condition from every housing unit to be always interconnected, never flying in the air, and the physical models was testing. So this is similar like leaves in the forest, which each leaf finds its own equal sun condition, rather than placing in a human definition of a certain packing system. So it's kind of ecology on its own. When I go to, this all history I have presented for me is impressive to test as well within the AI, and but this strategy, let me say, it's human expectation, what I will present you in some steps. So since AI came and Midjourney allowed us to envision the images, I was asking myself, how can we bring this in the kind of design thinking methodology, being able to embrace multiple ideas. One of the historical references very influenced to me to see the suprematism and its influences to go away from canonical definition of a certain historical moments or definitions which maybe is restricted in some times, or trying to reinvent within the existing knowledge and to understand a large-scale nature, the city and the parts of existing community layers as a new large-scale proposal definition, how we could interpret what the architects would do if the AI is coming into the reality. So by this step, I'm sharing this visual communication course free last semester, where within 3 weeks I constructed the exercise where we try to embed the arts and architecture representation is only one task, to see what this communication between the knowledge could do when we visually actually compose these worlds and access a certain moments from the arts and the architecture. As the Georges Braque painting is inventing ideas of representation in the cubism, AI has those definitions and it is all information is there. So multiple variations are here. Do we want three-dimensional? Do we want relief? So multiple explorations are presented. But what if I remove the instrument or musician as a motif and I would give it waterfall house? And I can also direct, is it a painting? Is it realistic or more abstract? I direct all those variants. But what if I take a paper layering such a strategy, which is not like a Photoshop filter? The way of technique of layering of paper becomes also informative in a design. And I was fascinated by those opportunities. What if we take a pointillism and invented techniques which could be inspired from micro scale and think about landscapes? I'm interested in this improvised strategies of the AI, envisioning it as a tiling or as layers and colors identification and scale. Sometimes it's a city or just stair landscapes of those pointillism segmentations becoming the description. What if we would take Henry Bottaio? It's extremely impressive, the jewelry scale of the architecture, and how this could be also as a representation where the tectonically affects as well the composition in a visual matter. And of course we can make it in three-dimensional scale. And of course we can talk about materials, transparencies, city scale. The way this exercise was instructed, we also collected those motifs as a larger motif, and students were choosing the references they were interested in and try to kind of experiment with the architectural representation, where the representation is becoming also a design tool for the final image. So I'm sharing several examples where, for example, Mies van der Rohe and Klimt are meeting together, what would happen and how the student directs those versions towards its own chosen direction. And for this step, I see a great exercise, not to see only formally, not to see only within the arts. I see as an open opportunity to become more interdisciplinary with a larger group of experts, seeing the potential and as an architect to envision new futures. Then I was fascinated by myself to go to the Friedrich Kiesler sitting space and just explore what would happen. So it's kind of happening that this definition is there, like in the first image, and then what if this a certain localizing food production becoming installation in a city or facade system or some kind of courtyard, social new ground for interaction and becoming investment, and which forms could be, but by following actually Friedrich Kiesler's Raumstadt. So what kind of new forms we could give, or specifically Kiesler's ability to invent the endless house where ecology, a light, a loop, and cycling, those circularity is, for me, the circularity embeds a lot of dimensions here within the architecture, and it's very informative and very interesting depth of how the multiplicity can meet together. So I was just playfully sharing with you experiments where the scalability was happening, that I asked, instead of endless house, to be the urban amplification for new topology with embedding the gardens, embedding the trees, and scaling up to the, instead of urban block, like in between of city, and to show a lot of visions within. It aesthetically sometimes keeps in the different versions, and it's interesting what is happening, how I can variate and explore a certain interventions in the city, and I can question within this information, like where I should more put research in architecture and what I could test quickly as an experiment. That's interesting to me as new opportunity. Well, when I go back to the abstraction, and I'm so by myself fascinated about Annie Albert's weaving techniques and descriptions, which are so abstract but impressive for us as an architects. We need the abstraction, and we need a certain ideas, and we can have them and take it from somewhere. Not the way I would take this image directly, but the way that Ungers describes the labyrinth and its own definitions. We can combine ideas from the history and actually give our own descriptions towards where it goes. So weaving, for me, like recombination, reorganization from existing repetition, and giving new programmatic opportunities and more new ways of reacting to the existing, to weave in within the scalability of unit, within the reorganization of new gap and opportunity, to give the recyclement the meaning of the recycled wood, and to react to existing content. That's interesting to me, that kind of aesthetics I could explore and see those visions as a thoughtful trajectory by as well kind of painting. Like what I mean it, I didn't have to model here everything and render it, so I could really simply test and explore my previous presented compositional principles by human thinking. And what if I would ask to envision that the building in itself weaves new ground for nature, and how that would look like? Some kind of answers in a visual representation were expressed here. And going to the environmental parts with AI, here I have a specific interest to embed circularities. And the circular design strategies is my current focus, and it's very often discussed as this is a technology approach, and it's more mechanical. But I think there is an opportunity also to understand through the design discipline. We see that density is taking away in nature, like this example in Austin. So when we have a mid-rise as an edge between single-family homes and nature, and I observe that the city of Austin has really great historical element, a tree and forestry. We create a lot non-human grounds, which is 60% covered by concrete when the than the buildings in itself. So this ground to me is questionable when we have automated vehicles. We will need less of our infrastructure taking big part of the city, which is non-human. I see there the opportunity to create new investment and new ideas for kind of communities which could be walkable, which could be embedded within the nature, and still using segments, abandoned buildings, and recompose them by new ideas of larger scale interventions, strengthening new local businesses and giving new ground for affordability, and giving new ground and those several voices embedding with nature void, human void, economical void, and this non-human ground reactivating within it. So I have shared a kind of envisioning those ideas. The light architecture, environmental part with AI impresses me also to overview the light in itself, such, for example, algae and solars, certain systems which stores carbon, produce energy. They have their own aesthetics. And as well, when we see in Scarpa's work, the stair is not thought as a one-dimensional definition. It's a very multiple definition of the navigation moment opening up in a very spatial dimension, but this can also be abstracted, and it's very impressive for us to look at all the time, and it's referenced, and it's an interesting moment in architecture. How those actually can start combine, and the light could be a void, new typology of void, not formal, but actually taking tectonics as the organization of structure, organization of aesthetics, but organization also of light to create like interiorities, and how this could be thoughtful as well by re-envisioning these opportunities and rethinking them again, rather perhaps keeping this modernistic composition. So I see here new dimensions. And the light architecture for me as environmental part is very interesting when the scientists are researching about the plants, and they relocating the agricultural dimensions in multiple city opportunities, and giving the light of red and blue, which creates spectrum of lights, being able to give everything what the plant needs from the plant perspective, less from human perspective. I'm asking a question how abandoned buildings or large interiors unused could be reinvested, and co-working, interiority, or new dimensions of new businesses could appear, but at the same time, growth and humans, growth of the food production and the human layer, those both entities can find compositional aspects or opportunities through the light in itself. So in those visions, the light was not identified. The AI was improvising these versions by the way I tell you the story. The prompts are described, where I see Singapore takes the action and puts a Cityponics rooftop farm on the parking garages. It covers a lot of parking garages with a certain kind of food production moment as a reaction to COVID times. I see this opportunity of temperature distance to have a human program under and the food production on top. What is beautiful here, not only automated system or high technology, but also human scale was implemented. The people from local content could work and is designed for human proportion to pick and be part of food production here. It's a very quick reaction. And Farm Ogden in Chicago is placing that kind of aquaponic systems. Aeroponic, aquaponic, hydroponic system saves 90% of the water, and it grows and produce. Farm start to implement in disinvested communities in the city areas this project as engineers, people seeking new job and profession and new start in their lives could meet together. It's very human-based program in a human needed content to me as a kind of strategy. And the farm technology could go very automated and scaleless in all dimensions. And such projects in Kilburn, in Texas, huge investment is happening in Texas, noticing the population value and the food production takes place in invisible dimensions. They are close to the cities, and it's happening. What is interesting for me, they are in multiple dimensions, can be placed in existing buildings. It can be new area. It's the way it looks like it is happening, and we maybe don't see that. But what if we can use that new opportunity of investment which is happening, and we could understand it's still happening. So it's not like as a new idea I'm talking about. I'm just very much interested how could we embed those multiple disciplines and give visions. What could be a shared space such as plaza or a gardening, food production, new human grounds on those non-human layers be presented, how this could happen, how this could look like within the existing content of our concrete areas, how the abandoned buildings could be rethought, and this investment could find a lot of gaps within the city, and we could research on new building topologies to re-envision them as a markets, as a human programs, such as other examples I have shared, or combining living more affordable models within this new investment as a new ground for something affordable, and localizing and establishing more walkable districts within these new opportunities. I see, to me, that abstraction allows to explore, experiment, and question as well. And I'm sharing a lot of images here just because I felt like it's a new layer in my research, how a certain light condition I call a void condition could be found in the cities as really experiment at the end by a lot of slides to conclude my talk, that I hope for more opportunities that a technology could give us, and opportunities to embed circular design strategies as a complex systems, to envision this as multidisciplinary, within the multidisciplinary background, and to talk to those visions and question. It's my big intention. And then I hope that environmental design can be, that environmental aspects in small, large scales can be still understood as the design discipline. Thank you.